Welcome to the Professional Website Investors Podcast, the show where we talk about what it takes to successfully buy, operate, scale, and sell a thriving e-commerce business. When it comes to doing business online, we believe that buying an existing website is far superior to building one from scratch. So, if you're a career professional who is looking to become an e-commerce store owner, listening to this show will give you the knowledge, tools, and community support you need to be successful. We've got another great episode for you today, so without further ado, let's get into today's discussion, and I'll be back on the other side to tie up any loose ends.
I'm your host, Ryan Cowden, and this week we're joined by Ian Bond from ProfessionalWebsiteInvestors.com. In this episode of the Professional Website Investor Podcast, Ian and I discuss the final questions you should be considering before you buy an online business. For people who are interested in buying online businesses, it can be hard to know when you're finally ready to commit and make your first purchase. There is a seemingly endless number of questions to ask and decisions to make, and it can be hard to know when you're prepared enough to act. Today, we're talking about the questions and self-assessments you should be considering as you move towards a final decision. We also talk about seeking success and the fact that you never fully know until you jump in and try. In this episode, you'll hear what you need to keep in mind as you make this decision, including your desired end state and monetization plan. Self-assessment advice, how understanding your personality type, skills, and interests should inform your decision, and the need to commit when the time is right. You'll never know everything, and you may never feel fully prepared. But if you have a good team of advisors around you and have asked all the right questions, you are as ready as you'll ever be. There's a lot of actionable advice in this episode, so grab something to write with because you're going to want to take notes. As always, I'll be back on the other side to wrap up any loose ends. So, without any further ado, here's my conversation with Ian Bond. All right, Ian, welcome back to the podcast. How you been recently?
Ryan, never better. Great to hear your voice again and see you again too. Now that we do these videos, last few podcasts ago we couldn't get the video to work.
I know.
It's all on my end here, so my apologies.
Good to see you. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Good to see you.
Yeah. Well, we're diving into a really interesting topic today. We're looking at websites and kind of that decision point. When do you really know that you're ready to pull the trigger, and what should you be considering at that stage in the game? So something you have a lot of experience with.
Well, I went through the soul searching, and I've described it before. We've talked a little bit about it on the podcast. Just to remind people, I became convinced through my professional analysis that website investing was an incredibly attractive opportunity. Mm-hmm. At 58 years old, my biggest fear was the tech fear. Could I crack that, or would I lose every penny I invested immediately? Right. I put down 53 deposits on websites with one website broker alone. and my bookkeeper nearly fired me because the money was going back and forth every time I canceled my deposit. And so, I have a lot of experience with the soul searching. So I wrote a blog piece that talks about, how you might think about a framework to get there. Okay. So how might you do that? Now, maybe we can, maybe ask me what you think the relevant questions are to unpack that, and be, fire away.
Sure. Well, I think one of the good places to start is one of the things that you mentioned is having an end goal in mind. So what's kind of your desired end state? And that's probably going to look different for different people, but how did you go about figuring out what your end state was going to look like?
Obviously, the old Stephen Covey, start with the end in mind. Comes, to the forefront when you think about this. Mm-hmm. You don't want to do something that you're going to be horribly unhappy with. I'll just give you for instance. I've been I've been in sales my whole life, and so we decided to do physical goods e-commerce that has a big customer service component. Mm-hmm. That worked, and also you have the supplier relationships, and so consequently it didn't threaten us. In fact, it was attractive to me to kind of bring my skills and experience to bear on that. Other people would make a totally different decision because they want nothing to do with them. And I know people like that, people that like to do analytical things and want nothing to do with human interaction. That wouldn't be me. That would make me unhappy. I enjoy what we're doing right now. So I think you have to start with, kind of like, if I end up succeeding in this, what's it look like? Obviously we're all here to make money for one reason or another. I am late career professional, and I'm here to make money to finance something beyond, this career that excites me and that can support my family. And so, there's certainly a monetary component, but you have to also think, do you want to go into the coal mine every day or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, right. Great. Well, another thing that you mentioned is kind of having some framework of a monetization strategy.
Yeah.
And you kind of want that piece in mind. And
so two things I would point out there. In the piece that we wrote, we talked. I leaned heavily on Tom Corley from Rich Habits, and if you just Google Tom Corley, Rich Habits, he has a wonderful blog. He did a study of wealthy people and what the habits are of the wealthy and how they, what they do that's different than normal people. And so he has a framework where he says, take expert knowledge, develop advanced skills, and then the way to achieve success is by you got to do it. Okay. So the big question is, how do you push yourself to get to that next level? Now, I've articulated and explained on this podcast that, I shamed myself into it because I put all those deposits down. I'll tell you a story. Before we moved over here, we went on a family vacation to Connecticut, rented a house. House came with a couple of bikes. My kids were 9 and 5 at the time, and both wanted to learn how to ride bikes. They're city kids, so we didn't have bikes in the city. One kid's a daredevil. One kid's incredibly cautious. Girl is older. Boy is younger. Boy is more cautious. Okay. But on either end of the bike trip, at the beginning, there was mom or dad on one end and mom or dad on the other end, expanding the distance between each other as we taught our kids how to ride bikes. And after, the long weekend or the week that we were there, both kids were riding bikes at the park around the tennis court, almost, unendingly. I mean, come on, it's time to go home kind of thing, and overjoyed to have learned it. How did they get there? They had mom and dad continuing to move the goalpost or move the distance further and further apart. But I would tell you that I think it's the same thing in terms of that achieving success component is the same thing. You need to try to lean on other third parties, other telltale signs, any kind of framework that you can develop that tells you that you're ready. In my own investing experience, I basically shamed myself into it and made a $17,000 tuition deposit on what I call the University of the Internet to say, look, I can afford to lose this. I really think it's going to work. I've done as much work as I possibly can. Time to pony up and try it.
Okay. So would you say that you mentioned two personality types? You got the daredevil and the cautious. Yeah. Which one are you?
I was overly cautious.
You were overly cautious.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I was 58 years old, investing in websites. I'm not a tech guy. Okay, so I manage tech guys.
Yeah.
Involved in all kinds. No. At work I have tech people reporting to me. We manage big projects. I've managed major transformational technology projects. I understand the moving parts. And if there was one thing that I underestimated, it was I could do that. I could take exactly those skills And with the pool of outsourced workers I have access to, I could literally recreate that. I really thought I was going to have to do more myself. And I'm incredibly positively surprised that the opposite is true.
Okay. So let's kind of talk that through. It sounds like an important step here is self-assessment, that people need to kind of figure out, what type of personality they have as they get into this. What do the daredevils need to keep in mind? And then what do the cautious people need to keep in mind is if you're just getting started?
I've talked about this before, but I think that in any website investment, there is an activity chain that you need to think about how you're going to solve. The activity chain are the activities that you need to succeed in that endeavor. Okay. So if you take physical goods e-commerce, there are supplier relations, there's the website stuff, and then there's the customer service, customer support. And so I thought really hard about that activity chain, and that didn't scare me. Now, it scared me a lot when I looked at content sites, which I think the activity chain is very different. There's keyword research, and there is backlinking, and there's PBN strategies, and there's a bunch of stuff that didn't appeal to me, that I knew I wouldn't, excel at, and didn't have any immediate thing that I could bring to bear on it. Whereas having been in sales my whole life and being an online shopper, I felt like I could actually discern value on the internet in terms of the sites, discern how I could add value to the customer experience. And as I've said before, I think to a certain extent, physical goods e-commerce is a little bit like real estate. For most people, it's fairly intuitive. And so, I got comfortable with that activity chain is the short answer to your question, Ryan.
Okay. So people need to find something that they're going to enjoy, kind of the daily tasks. It's going to kind of fall within their skill set.
Break it down into what you need to succeed and figure out how you're going to handle that component. Now, the middle component, that web stuff I mentioned, we outsource all that. We don't do that. We have, the beautiful thing is that the bulk of the websites that are available today, particularly in the e-commerce world, but also in the content world, run on standardized platforms, and there's all kinds of workers you can hire to do that stuff. And so, whether your e-commerce site runs on Shopify or BigCommerce, there are developers that you hire. All you have to do is tell them what you want. You have to be very prescriptive on what you want, but they'll do it. They do it really, really cheaply. I mean, I say cheaply, $4, $5, $6, $8 an hour cheap.
Oh, wow.
And they work, ungodly hours. I mean, lots of hours. And, it's this incredible pool of talent. And I have to tell you, I think the reality is that, that most people here probably have an idea that they just need to figure out how they can leverage that pool of talent out there in order to, best help them achieve their goal.
Okay. You mentioned this kind of chain of working through the Tom Corley method of analyzing what are your expert knowledge, where that lies. Does that need to fall within any specific sphere, or is it just kind of what do those expert skills look like that people are self-assessing for?
Yeah, I mean, well, look, I think I think what I identified for myself was, I'm kind of a people person. I've been in sales. I know that I can have a conversation with someone. I can think on my feet. I enjoy it. It doesn't repulse me. I look forward to it. I know conversely that doing keyword research and being inside a spreadsheet all day is not going to, get me up in the morning.
Okay.
I don't think you have to go to 23andMe and get your DNA tested. I think it's just stuff where it's, some fairly easy questions.
Okay.
You get to those questions by doing what I said about developing the activity chain and really thinking hard about what it takes to succeed.
Okay.
In the monetization model that you choose.
Okay. So
Makes
there's
sense, man. So,
yeah, absolutely. So there's the activity chain, there's the monetization model, there's kind of your expert knowledge. Is there a point where people need to start thinking about developing certain advanced skills, or is it more
yes.
okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the activity chain then tells you what you need to succeed. Some of those gaps, some of those things you can do yourself with honing your skill set. Okay. Right. You can learn, let's just say one of the key components, and we've mentioned this before, is traffic to a website. You can understand very easily what the way to succeed in getting traffic to your website is, both through organic means and through paid traffic. You don't necessarily have to be the person that does that, but you need to be able to understand it well enough to manage someone that can do that and evaluate whether or not they're doing a good job. Okay. So I'm not, involved in the paid traffic campaigns other than to evaluate and to stay on top of the trends and to probe where I think that there are gaps. And success is obviously how well you're succeeding is obviously a great guidepost. But anyways, long story short, there is that little gap that you're going to need to fill. You can't hire a professional or an outsourced worker without being able to speak to them, like you do at your job, to someone that you're going to put on a task. You've got to be prescriptive. You've got to know what you want. The worst thing is particularly to hire a VA and not to have a procedure or not to have something very prescriptive, because what you'll get back will look very different than maybe what you had in mind. Okay. Most certainly it'll be very, very different. So that's the advanced. When I think of advanced skills, I think of developing, filling the gaps on where you're at and where you need to be. Let me give you a great example. My wife is wonderful at being incredibly prescriptive. She's very linear, so she thinks about how a worker needs to do what we need them to do on any given process or procedure, and then she actually literally records in software screenshots that show them what to do, and our people love that. They just love it. So it works out really great.
That's great. Yeah, it's great that you and your wife kind of have a team dynamic too. that's helpful.
Yeah. I mean, it's worked incredibly well for us. So sure. I mean, whether you do this on your own with a spouse, which has its challenges, or whether or not you partner with someone or someone's, you will partner with people that have skills that are complementary to you for sure.
Okay. It sounds like the more you talk about it, you kind of get to the point where you just have to go in and do it. And
there's no question. Okay. Yeah. So, Tom Corley's third piece is achieving success. Guess what? Okay. The only way to achieve success is to take the plunge. It's to jump in the pool. It's, you've had the swimming lessons. Yeah. It's to ride the bike. Okay. And so the $64,000 question is, well, when am I going to be ready to do that? Well, you need to get people to give you honest assessments. You need to look, to see if there's more work you can do around analysis. And then ultimately you have to take a call. Can you do this? Like I did after 53 deposits, and there is no guarantee. So as much as you can limit the risk, you limit the risk. But at some point, the only way to succeed is to try. Okay. And then, what you find is once you own a website is you'll fail every day in small ways at things. And, the old Tropical MBA post about, it takes 1,000 days to get there, or the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours of mastery, right. Well, I don't know what it is. I'm not sure anybody knows what it is, but, the more time you do it, that you stay in business, the closer you get to becoming a master at it.
Okay. Well, I think it's interesting because when you talk about building your first website, you kind of say what caused you to pull the trigger was you kind of shamed yourself into doing it. But that's not how you trained your kids to ride your bike. You and your wife were kind of building their confidence.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, look, I've analyzed this before, and I should have had better coaching. I should have had better. I should have had someone holding me accountable on a 5-step process to get there. I should have had someone looking over my shoulder. Look, I'm really great at analyzing the deals, but I could have gone behind the scenes and looked at things, with someone and had someone task me to do there's a lot of different things I could have done better. Okay. It would have helped me specifically, but may not have helped someone else, or maybe there are other people just like. Okay. And so kind of one of the things that I like to do is to try to answer those questions for people. So,
okay, great. Well, last time we talked, you told the story of jumping in for the first time and acquiring your first business. And I think it'd be good to build on that and talk about, building your confidence and pushing into your second online business that you acquired and what you learned pushing into that sphere.
Yeah. So if you recall, the first business was the tuition for what I call the University of the Internet. This was October of 2015. We bought the site for $17,000. It was an 8-year-old site. I was worried because of the tech stuff that I'd lose all my money within the first week. It clearly didn't happen. We found out, wow, we can actually do this. It worked out really well. And so we did it. And then, a month later, there was a site that came for sale that I'd been looking at where it was in a much larger market where we had the opportunity to address, a bigger opportunity. And we took a shot and then we really got pregnant and got in trouble. I mean, we took we started to play against some very big competitors and compete in a real meaningfully competitive market. Yeah. And, that was a real lesson in humility for a long time because, every day we would learn, someone would, steal our lunch money and we'd fail in a small way. And my wife and I had this, kind of mantra that, if we made a mistake or something bad happened, it didn't put us out of business. Guess what? We lived to play another day. That was it. Okay. It was just horrible. I don't wish it upon anybody. And being part of, our community or other communities or, having someone that you can talk these things through with, just to keep your head clear. We were lucky. As you mentioned, we had each other, but you question yourself every day when you're going through that process. This is horrible.
Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. So I guess kind of the theme of this episode is, do you ever know that you know that you know, or do you just jump in and figure it out?
I think it depends on you go back. Is it your personality type? Are you the reckless 9-year-old? Or are you the cautious 5-year-old? And have you done the work you can do? And the best way to judge that is try to get as much third-party validation. Yeah. You've got expert skills. What are the gaps that you can work on to sharpen those skills? You have expert knowledge. What are the gaps that you can, fill to sharpen those skills? What is the framework around how you're going to succeed? And how are you going to personally attack that? And then once you've done all that, then you're at the moment of truth.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this was great, Ian. Thank you so much. That was some great stuff. Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah. It was fun. There is no very formula. Okay. There is no moment of truth. There is, for some people it's easier than for others, but I can only tell you that once you get there, once you taste the success, it's incredibly, it's overwhelmingly reinforcing. So gotta go for it. Gotta go for it.
All right. Thanks, Ian. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Okay, Ryan.
All right.
That's great, man.
Thanks. All right, folks, there you have it. That wraps up my conversation with Ian Bond of Professional Website Investors. He shared a ton of valuable insights and advice today on how to move from contemplation to action when considering buying an online business. We also shared some tools and resources, which will all be linked up in the show notes at professionalwebsiteinvestors.com. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. Please consider subscribing, sharing with a friend, or leaving us a review in your favorite podcast directory. Until next time, best of luck in all that you do, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Professional Website Investors Podcast.